The air on the 42nd floor of the Brennan and Associates building always felt thinner, as if the oxygen was reserved for those with the most ambition. Olivia Brennan stood in the doorway of her corner office, her silhouette framed by the orange and pink bruising of a Chicago sunset. She was the youngest CFO in the company's 40-year history, a title that felt like a suit of armor she hadn't quite finished strapping on. Her father, the legendary Silas Brennan, had retired 6 months ago, leaving her a throne made of glass and a board of directors who watched her every move for a hint of nepotism-induced weakness. Numbers were her sanctuary. On a spreadsheet, everything balanced. If there was a deficit, you found the source and eliminated it. If there was an asset, you maximized it. But for 4 years, she had been haunted by a variable that refused to fit into her formulas: Marcus Reed. Marcus was a senior investment analyst whose performance was, quite frankly, offensive in its perfection. His quarterly reports were masterpieces of clarity. His risk assessments were prescient. His client retention was at a staggering 97%. By every metric of the Brennan and Associates machine, Marcus Reed should have been a managing director by now. He should have been the one standing in the corner office. Instead, every single day at exactly 5:25 p.m., Marcus Reed began the ritual. Olivia watched him now through the glass partitions of the bullpen. He didn't rush. He didn't look at the clock with the frantic energy of a man desperate to escape. He moved with a mechanical, somber grace. He cleared his mahogany desk until it was a barren landscape. He shut down his monitors. He slid his leather satchel over his shoulder. At 5:30 p.m., his hand touched the heavy brass handle of the exit door. Tonight, the silence of the office, the low hum of the HVAC, and the distant tapping of a few stragglers felt deafening. Something in Olivia, perhaps the pressure of the upcoming Whitmore acquisition or the weight of her father's shadow, finally snapped. Marcus! The name left her mouth with more sharp edges than she intended. Marcus froze. He didn't jump. He simply ceased motion, his hand still on the handle. He turned slowly. His face was a mask of professional neutrality, but his eyes, a slate gray that reminded Olivia of the lake before a storm, held a weariness that seemed to pull at the light in the room. "Yes, Miss Brennan?" 4 years, Olivia said, stepping out of her office. Her heels clicked on the marble floor like a countdown. 4 years I've watched you walk out the door while the rest of your team is buried in the trenches. You've turned down 3 promotions. You've skipped every networking gala. You're the best we have, yet you act like this place is a prison you're only allowed to leave on a technicality. She stopped 3 feet from him. The board thinks you're hiding a side business. Tina in HR thinks you're just quirky. I think you're a waste of potential. Why won't you date? Why won't you stay? What is so important that the world ends for you at 5:30? The silence that followed was heavy, pressurized. Marcus looked at her, and for a fleeting second, the mask slipped. Olivia saw a flicker of something raw, not anger, but a profound, bottomless exhaustion. "You really want to know, Olivia?" he asked. It was the first time he had used her first name. It felt like an invitation into a dark room. "I do." "Then I suggest you stop looking at my billable hours," he said quietly, "and start looking at the promises people keep when no one is watching." He opened the door and walked out. To understand Marcus Reed, Olivia realized she had to look at the before. The next morning, she arrived at 6 a.m., the office still smelling of industrial lemon cleaner and stale coffee. She bypassed her own reports and went straight to the secure archives. She pulled Marcus's original hiring file from 4 years ago. The before Marcus was a different man. The photo on his initial ID badge showed a man with a wide, easy smile and light in his eyes. He had been a rising star at a firm in New York before suddenly resigning and moving to Chicago for a lateral move. That made no sense on paper. She dug deeper. There, buried under tax forms and insurance beneficiaries, was the first crack in the mystery. Emergency Contact 1, Jennifer Reed, wife. Emergency Contact 2, St. Catherine's Long-Term Care. Olivia felt a chill that had nothing to do with the office air conditioning. She pulled up her browser and typed in the name of the facility, St. Catherine's, specialists in traumatic brain injury and persistent vegetative states. The transition from the 42nd floor to the east corridor of St. Catherine's was a journey between two different dimensions of time. In the office, seconds were billable, urgent, and sharp. In room 217, time was a thick, stagnant pool. Marcus entered the room with the practiced quiet of a man who didn't want to startle a dream. He didn't look at the monitors first, the jagged green lines of the heart rate or the rhythmic hiss of the ventilator. He looked at Jennifer's face. To the doctors, she was a patient in a persistent vegetative state. To Marcus, she was the girl who had challenged him to a race on their first date and won by 10 yards. He hung his suit jacket on the back of the chair, the same chair he had occupied for approximately 1,460 evenings. He didn't see the hospital gown. He saw the way the afternoon light hit her hair, which he had brushed back earlier that morning before work. "Hey, sweetheart," he whispered, taking her hand. Her skin was cool, but he held it until it warmed to the temperature of his own. "Long day today. The new CFO, Olivia Brennan. She's starting to see things she shouldn't. She's smart. Too smart for my own good." He pulled a worn paperback from his bag. It was a romance novel Jennifer had been halfway through on the night of the accident. He never read ahead. He read only a few pages a night, savoring the prose as if finishing the book would mean finishing their story. "We're at the part where they finally admit they're in love," he told her, his voice a soft baritone that seemed to fill the sterile gaps of the room. "You always said the tension was better than the resolution. I think you were right." At 7 p.m., Marcus left the sanctuary of the hospital for the chaos of the after-school program. This was the second half of his double life. Lily was 8, a whirlwind of tangled dark curls and her mother's stubborn chin. When she saw Marcus, she didn't just walk, she launched. She was a kinetic explosion of energy that demanded he remain in the present. "Daddy, Mr. Peters said I'm the only one who can draw a dragon with 3 heads without making it look like a hydrangea." Marcus caught her, swinging her upward. For a brief moment, the heaviness of the 42nd floor and the silence of room 217 vanished. "A hydrangea, huh? That's a very specific botanical insult, Lil." As they drove home, Lily chattered about her day, but the conversation always drifted to the same anchor. "Did you tell Mommy about my math test?" "I did," Marcus said, keeping his eyes on the road. "She was very proud. I think she liked the part about the fractions most." Did she say anything back today?" The question was a tiny dagger, used so often the wound never quite closed. Marcus reached over and squeezed her hand. "Not with words, Lil, but the room felt warmer when I told her. I think she was smiling on the inside." They went home to a house that was a museum of a life interrupted. Jennifer's shoes were still by the door. Her favorite mug was still on the top shelf, untouched. To some it was macabre. To Marcus and Lily, it was a refusal to concede. They ate spaghetti, Jennifer's recipe, at a table set for 3. The empty chair wasn't a void, it was a placeholder. Back at Brennan and Associates, Olivia Brennan was struggling with a new kind of insomnia. The numbers on the Whitmore deal were starting to look like hospital monitors. Every time she saw Marcus in the hallway, she felt like a voyeur. She knew about the sickness and health vow he was living out in real time, yet she had to maintain the charade of being his superior. She began to notice the small cracks she had missed before. She saw that Marcus's lunch was often a protein bar, eaten while staring at a drawing tucked inside his drawer, a crayon rendering of a family of 3. She saw the way he winced when someone made a joke about having a life outside of work. One afternoon, she found him in the break room, staring into the microwave as if it held the secrets to the universe. "Marcus," she said softly. He straightened his posture instantly. "Miss Brennan, I'm just finishing up. I'll be back at the desk in 2 minutes." "Stop," she said, her voice surprisingly gentle. "I'm moving the deadline for the preliminary audit to Friday. You don't need to stay late tonight to finish it." Marcus looked at her, his gray eyes narrowing. He was looking for the catch. "Why?" "Because the weather is turning," Olivia said, looking out at the gray Chicago sky. "And I imagine the commute to the suburbs can be difficult in the rain." It was a test, a small acknowledgement that she knew he traveled far. Marcus didn't flinch, but his grip on his coffee mug tightened. "I appreciate the consideration, Olivia," he said, his voice cautious. "But I don't need special treatment. I've managed for 4 years." "Maybe you shouldn't have to manage alone," she countered. The tension in the break room was palpable. Olivia wanted to tell him she had seen him. She wanted to tell him that she found his devotion the most beautiful and terrifying thing she had ever encountered. But she was the CFO, and he was the analyst, and the bridge between them was built on a foundation of professional distance. The act ends on a Wednesday when a freak storm paralyzes Chicago. The city is locked in a gridlock of sleet and ice. In the office, the power flickers and the elevators groan. Marcus is frantic. It's 5:45 p.m. The trains are delayed and the roads are parking lots. He is pacing the lobby, his phone pressed to his ear. I know, he says into the phone, his voice laced with a panic Olivia has never heard. "Lily, stay with Mrs. Gable. I'm coming. I don't care about the snow. I'll walk if I have to." Olivia watches him from the mezzanine. She sees the composure of the best analyst shatter. He looks like a man who is watching his world drown while he's stuck on the shore. She walks down the stairs, her car keys already in her hand. She knows her luxury SUV can handle the ice better than his aging sedan. "Marcus," she calls out, "I'm driving. I can get you to the facility and then we'll pick up your daughter." Marcus turns to her, his face pale. The pride that has kept him silent for 4 years wars with the desperation of a father and a husband. The storm howls against the glass doors. "You don't know where I'm going," he says, a final, weak attempt at a secret. "I do," Olivia replies. "I've known for a while. Now get in the car." As they step out into the freezing wind, the professional distance finally collapses. The architecture of silence has been breached, and as the car pulls out into the whiteout, the real story begins. The interior of Olivia's SUV was a silent sanctuary against the howling Chicago sleet. Marcus sat in the passenger seat, his body wound so tight he looked like he might snap the leather. This was the first time in 4 years he hadn't been the one in control of the steering wheel, the first time he wasn't the sole engine driving his life forward. "Turn left on Harrison," Marcus said, his voice clipped. He hadn't looked at Olivia once since they left the garage. "I know the way, Marcus," she said gently. He finally turned his head. The dashboard lights cast a soft blue glow over the sharp angles of his face. How long have you known?" "Since the night of the charity gala. I saw your file, and then I went there. I didn't go in, I just saw you through the window." Marcus let out a long, shuddering breath. He leaned his head back against the headrest, closing his eyes. "I spent 4 years building a wall so high I thought no one could see over it. I thought if I kept the 2 lives separate, I could protect them both. The analyst protects the husband protects the father. You were protecting yourself too," Olivia added, navigating a slick patch of black ice. "From the pity, from the questions." "Pity is a poison, Olivia. It makes people look at you like you're already a ghost. I'm not a ghost. And Jennifer, she isn't a memory." When they arrived at St. Catherine's, the facility was running on backup generators. The dim, flickering emergency lights gave the East Corridor a ghostly, ethereal quality. Marcus didn't wait for Olivia. He sprinted toward room 217. Olivia followed at a distance. She watched from the doorway as Marcus fell into his chair. He didn't check the equipment first. He checked her hand. "The power went out, Jen," he whispered, his voice thick with a raw, terrifying vulnerability. "I was late. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry." Olivia stood in the shadows of the hall. For the first time, she saw Jennifer Reed up close. She was beautiful in a static, frozen way, like a masterpiece kept under glass. The room was filled with Lily's drawings, hundreds of them, a chronological map of a child's growth rendered in crayon. It was a gallery of a life that refused to stop. There were drawings of a mother at a soccer game she never attended, a mother at a graduation that hadn't happened yet. It was heartbreakingly hopeful. Marcus looked up and saw Olivia standing there. He didn't wave her away. Instead, he reached for the silver watch in his pocket and set it on the bedside table. This was her grandmother's. She was supposed to give it to Lily on her 8th birthday. That was 3 months ago. I haven't been able to give it to her yet. It feels like like I'm admitting the hand it belongs to is gone. Olivia stepped into the room, the scent of antiseptic and lavender hitting her. You aren't admitting anything, Marcus. You're just holding it in trust. The drive to pick up Lily was shorter, but more intense. When they arrived at the after-school center, Lily was the last child left. She was sitting on a plastic crate, her backpack on her lap, looking at the door with a stoicism that no 8-year-old should possess. When she saw Marcus, she didn't cry. She just exhaled a breath she seemed to have been holding for hours. Then her eyes shifted to Olivia. "You're the lady from the drawing," Lily said, pointing a small finger. "The lonely one." Olivia felt a lump form in her throat. "I'm Olivia. I'm a friend of your dad's." Lily studied her with the terrifyingly keen intuition of a child who has grown up in the shadow of a tragedy. "He doesn't have friends. He has associates. Are you an associate?" "I think I'm a friend," Olivia said, kneeling down so she was at Lily's eye level. The ride home was different. Lily sat in the back, chattering about a penguin joke she'd heard, seemingly unfazed by the storm now that her father was within arm's reach. But when they reached their house, a modest craftsman-style home, Marcus hesitated. "The power is likely out here too," he said, looking at Olivia. "You can't drive back to the city in this. The bridges are closing." "I'll be fine, Marcus. I can find a hotel." "No," Lily chirped from the back. "We have the guest room. It has the fluffy blankets, and Daddy makes the best emergency spaghetti when the lights go out." While Olivia sat in a dark kitchen in the suburbs, lit only by a few flickering candles and the sound of Lily's laughter, the 42nd floor of the Brennan building was far from quiet. The senior VP, a man named Sterling, who'd been passed over for the CFO position when Olivia was hired, was in a private meeting with 3 board members. On the table before them was a log of Marcus Reed's unreliability. "He left during the most critical hour of the Whitmore merger," Sterling said, his voice a low, predatory purr, "and he took the CFO with him. We have a lead analyst who refuses to work past 5:30 and a CFO who is clearly compromised by whatever personal drama is happening there." He slid a folder across the desk. It contained a private investigator's photos of Marcus entering St. Catherine's. "The board doesn't like liabilities, Sterling," one of the members said. "We like stability. If Reed is distracted by a dead-end medical situation, he's a risk. And if Olivia Brennan is protecting that risk, she's an even bigger one." The plan was hatched in the dark, miles away from the warmth of Marcus's kitchen. By Monday, Marcus would be handed a performance improvement plan that required 60-hour weeks and mandatory travel, a death sentence for his life with Jennifer and Lily. Back at the house, after Lily had fallen asleep, Olivia and Marcus sat by the fireplace. The storm was a muffled roar outside. "She's amazing, Marcus," Olivia said. "Lily, she has your resilience." "She has Jennifer's heart," Marcus replied, staring into the embers. "Sometimes I look at her and I feel like I'm drowning because she looks so much like the woman I'm losing, and yet she's the only thing keeping me afloat." "You aren't losing her," Olivia said firmly. "You've kept her alive for 4 years. That's not losing, that's fighting." Marcus turned to her. In the firelight, the professional barriers were gone. He wasn't the analyst and she wasn't the boss. They were just 2 people who had found a strange, quiet connection in the middle of a blizzard. "Why are you doing this, Olivia? Why do you care?" "Because for 31 years I thought success was a title," she whispered. "I thought a corner office was the goal. But watching you, I realized I've never loved anything enough to stay for it. I've never made a promise that didn't have an expiration date. You're the first person who has shown me what love actually looks like when the lights go out." She reached out and touched his hand, the same hand that spent every evening warming Jennifer's. For a second, he didn't pull away. "They're going to come for you, Marcus," she warned. "The board. They don't understand 5:30. They only understand the bottom line." "Let them come," Marcus said, his voice returning to that steady, rhythmic steel. "I've survived a car crash that ended my world. A boardroom full of men in suits doesn't scare me." But as Olivia looked at him, she knew it wasn't just his job on the line. It was the delicate ecosystem of hope he had built. And she realized with a sudden and terrifying clarity that she was willing to burn her own career down to protect it. The storm had passed, leaving Chicago encased in a deceptive, sparkling layer of ice. But inside the Brennan and Associates building, the atmosphere was frigid. Olivia walked into her office on Monday morning to find a memo on her desk. It wasn't from her father. It was from Sterling and the board's executive committee. It was a restructuring proposal. The trap. The proposal was a masterclass in corporate execution. It mandated that the lead analyst on the Whitmore acquisition, Marcus, be relocated to the London office for 6 months to oversee the final integration. No exceptions. No remote work. It was a move designed to force Marcus to resign or to abandon the vigil at room 217. "It's for the good of the firm, Olivia," Sterling said, leaning against her doorframe later that morning. A man with his talents is wasted sitting in a cubicle until 5:30. He needs the international stage. Olivia didn't blink. "You know he can't go, Sterling. You're not trying to promote him, you're trying to amputate him." "If he can't put the firm first, he doesn't belong at the firm," Sterling replied, his smile thin and sharp. "And if you can't enforce the board's directives, perhaps you don't belong in that chair either." The decision. Olivia summoned Marcus to her office. She didn't sit behind her desk this time. She stood by the window, looking out at the city that felt increasingly like a machine designed to grind down anything that didn't fit. When she told him, Marcus didn't erupt in anger. He simply looked at the silver watch on her desk, the one she had brought back for him. "They're asking me to choose between my life and my soul," Marcus said quietly. "I won't let them do it," Olivia said. "I'll fight the board. I'll tell them I've authorized a special dispensation." "You do that, and Sterling will have your job by Friday," Marcus countered. "Your father built this place. Are you willing to lose your heritage for an analyst who leaves at 5:30? It's not about the heritage anymore, Marcus. It's about whether this building has a pulse." The counter moved that night. Olivia didn't go to St. Catherine's. She went to her father's estate. Silas Brennan was a man of cold logic, but as Olivia told him the story, not of Marcus the analyst, but of Marcus the husband, she saw the old man's hands tremble. "I taught you that numbers never lie, Olivia," Silas said, staring into the fire. "But I forgot to teach you that they also don't tell the whole truth. A man who keeps a promise for 4 years is the only man I want managing my money." The miracle. At St. Catherine's, the miracle Marcus had waited 1,460 days for finally happened. While reading the final chapter of the romance novel, the one Jennifer had started before the crash, Marcus felt a pressure on his palm. It wasn't a reflex. It wasn't a twitch. It was a deliberate, synchronized squeeze of his fingers. "Jen!" Marcus gasped, his heart hammering against his ribs. "Jen, if you can hear me, do it again." She didn't do it again. Not that night. But the doctors, usually the harbingers of cold reality, saw a change in her brain activity. "There's a flare," the lead neurologist said, pointing to the MRI. "Something is waking up." The sacrifice. While Marcus was experiencing the greatest hope of his life, Olivia was facing the greatest professional crisis of hers. The board had called an emergency vote of no confidence. Sterling had presented evidence that Olivia was using company funds for personal reasons. The anonymous donation to St. Catherine's. Olivia stood before the board, her head held high. She didn't deny it. "I didn't use company funds for a stranger," she told them. "I invested in the integrity of our greatest asset. I invested in the idea that a person's word matters. If this firm stands for nothing but profit, then my father's name on the door is a lie." She reached into her bag and pulled out a resignation letter. "You don't have to vote, I'm leaving, but I'm taking the Whitmore deal with me. I'm the only one they trust." The revelation. The room went silent. In that moment, the door opened. Silas Brennan walked in. He wasn't the CEO anymore, but he owned 40% of the stock, and he hadn't been to the office in 6 months. "The girl is right," Silas barked. "Sterling, you're fired. Olivia, sit down. And someone get me Marcus Reed. I want to hear the end of that book." The transition. The 42nd floor has changed. The architecture of silence has been replaced by something warmer. There is a new policy at Brennan and Associates, the 5:30 rule. No meetings are scheduled after 4 o'clock. No one is judged for leaving to be with their family. Marcus still leaves at 5:30, but now he doesn't leave alone. The gallery Jennifer is no longer in room 217. She is in a rehabilitation wing, sitting in a wheelchair. She doesn't speak yet, and her gaze sometimes drifts, but when Lily walks into the room, Jennifer's eyes find her with a clarity that defies medical science. Lily has a new drawing. In this one, there are 4 figures. The nice lady from work isn't standing at the edge anymore. She's holding a bouquet of flowers, standing next to Marcus. The promise Olivia visits St. Catherine's, not as a donor or a boss, but as a friend. She sits with Marcus and Jennifer in the garden. "You were right," Olivia says to Marcus, watching Lily show her mother a new book. "Some promises don't have expiration dates." Marcus looks at his wife, then at Olivia. The weariness in his eyes is gone, replaced by a quiet, grounded peace. He reaches out and takes Jennifer's hand with his left, and briefly, he rests his right hand on Olivia's shoulder. "They don't," Marcus agrees. "They just change shape." The final scene. The story ends back at the office. It's 5:30 p.m. Olivia is in her office, but she isn't looking at spreadsheets. She's packing her bag. She stops by Marcus's desk. It's no longer empty. It has a photo now, a real one. It's a photo of Marcus, Lily, and Jennifer in the hospital garden, with Olivia standing just behind them, laughing. "Ready to go?" Marcus asks, his satchel over his shoulder. "Ready," Olivia says. They walk toward the exit together. As the brass handle turns and the door closes behind them, the office lights dim. The work is done. The promises remain. And for the first time in her life, Olivia Brennan isn't running toward a title. She's just going home.